would like to welcome Chita Liver today to the Strategy Maker podcast. Chita, we are family. You are my youngest brother, I can say. And I would like to welcome you to the Strategy Maker podcast.
Thank you, John. It's really an honor to be on your podcast.
So you've got quite an unusual name. Tell us a little bit more that the audience can get to know you. Where is this name from?
Yeah, so the name Cheetah, people in South Africa will relate it to animal, you know, that fast one with the spots on. And they would think it comes from speed. And then it's just by accident that I did play quite a bit of rugby and I played left wing. So they were speed involved, but that was purely by fluke. And interesting, the name comes from the Tarzan films, I suppose the early 70s or late 60s. There was a specific series of Tarzan films that the main cast was a guy by the name of Johnny Weissmuller. He was an Olympic American swimmer, and he got the role of Tarzan because he was very well built. And Tarzan, in all the movies, has got a chimpanzee as a friend. And the chimpanzee in that specific film, which I watched when I was quite young, was the name was Cheetah, spelled C-H-I-T-A. And apparently, according to our mother, I did some moves on the grass the next day after seeing the movie, and she said, "You look like Cheetah." And from that day, I called myself Cheetah by saying, "Cheetah's hungry, Cheetah's thirsty." And everybody started calling me Cheetah. And I did actually track the chimpanzee. And unfortunately, just a few years ago, I couldn't fulfill my dream to go and meet him because he retired. And he was over 40 years old, and he was living on a sanctuary farm outside one of the main cities in America. And you guys can go Google it. He is very cute when he sits in the mornings and he has breakfast with his caregiver, and also have some bad habits like me. And he had a can of Coke every morning with his breakfast.
Well, I can vouch that you don't have that kind of bad habits. So obviously we want to know or learn more about your business today. So fill us in a little bit about your career background. Where have you started off in life, in business?
After rugby played a very big role in my life, which most probably to my detriment. I told my kids they mustn't make the same mistake as me, then putting too much time into sport. You need a qualification as well. I unfortunately spent a lot of time on rugby because I had a big dream to play for the Springboks. I also went to play in London at some stage for a club. And before my return, people really wanted me to stay there because they thought I could play for England. But my dream was to play for the Springboks. And I came back and I came close. There was a little bit of a bounce of the ball. But if I look back now, I think, I should have also have a good balance then by studying harder and get a degree, which I didn't do because of rugby. And eventually after army and after university and after rugby, I got a lucky break and I got a job at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I started on the floor in 1991 as a trader with the open outcry system. You guys will remember those days, it was still those big boards where there were reporters standing on the boards, and every time you do a deal and you shout out the price, the reporter will document the price on these big black boards. It was a manual system. And I worked for a very small firm where I learned all the tricks in the trade of the stock exchange. I wasn't appointed in a big firm where you only had one specific thing that you did. You did really cover a lot of the field of the stock exchange. I then, in 1996, we called it the Big Bang, is where South Africa opened up our financial borders to overseas companies to buy into stockbrokers and obtain their own stockbroking licenses. I was then headhunted by ING Bearings. You guys will remember the famous Bearings Bank that was written off by a single trader, and eventually the bank, the Queen of England's accounts was held at Bearings Bank. It was the oldest bank in England, which was written off. And ING, which was a bank from the Netherlands, a Dutch bank, they bought ING. They bought Bearings for £1, and they took them over, and it became ING Bearings. When they came into the country, they didn't buy brokers. They headhunted individuals. I was then headhunted as part of a team. I moved to them in 1996, where I became a sales trader. Sales trader meaning servicing institutional customers, servicing them with information, and on the back of your information, you would then get purchase or selling orders from them, and then you execute the orders on the stock exchange, which was then totally changed into a computerized system. You literally then didn't have the fun and games and all the traditions and things off the floor anymore, but you were literally sitting behind a computer, in front of the computer, and trading every single day, which took a lot of the tradition out of it. But there was other challenges as well, because of how you read the depth of the market, how many sellers there are, how many buyers there are, at what stage should you be buying and what stage you should be selling. So that was a complete new computerized skill that you had to learn. I then moved in 97 to the first BEE company on the stock exchange. I was not the BEE component. I was just one of the sales traders, and we were a team of 3, and we really did well in those years, where the 3 of us had the skill of fishing out where the big orders in the market was lying. Then we approached the big companies, listed companies, to get shares from them, that we could offer to the market. And we, in that way, we created a lot of trade flow. And I will never forget, in those days, our monthly budget was literally a commission, a brokerage fee of 300,000 Rand a month to pay all the salaries and stuff. And we had one day where we made 250,000 Rands of brokerage in one day. Wow. We had phone calls the next day from all the institutions that says, you're not getting anything from us for the rest of the month because you got more than all the biggest brokers. So yeah, we literally almost had to take a 2-week golf tournament or golf trip to just get out of the office. Anyway, that was in 97, 96, 97. And here by around about 2000, I had to make a decision. I felt that I wasn't seeing my kids enough. I didn't have the opportunity to go to all their sports events. And I decided to take the big leap and start my own businesses and leave the stock exchange, which was literally also taking a huge income drop, because they had very good bonuses at the stock exchange. But my decision was to have more time of my own to spend with my kids and my family. And I decided I'll just start from the bottom and work myself up into a favorable financial position again. After a few little excursions and adventures, which ranges really from the car market to the diamond mining market to a pizza shop to this way and that way, eventually the opportunity came my way to have a look at starting a repatriation business.
And that is where we are today. So Total Funeral Logistics has the most amazing story about how this business model was developed. Tell us about that. Where has this grown from the earth? Because it's literally grown from the earth.
Yeah, John, in around about 2006, one of my managers at the pizza store came to me and said to me, there is this industry where it's called repatriation, and that his brother was doing it and he was doing well, and he also wants to do it, but he doesn't have the capital to do it. I put him off for 2 years because I didn't think it was a good idea. I just couldn't see how this could develop. And after 2 years, he brought another guy to me a guy by the name of Mike Mbuli. And Mike had quite a bit of experience in the funeral industry. And Mike at that time was available to sort of drive one vehicle for us. And I went to Bridget, my wife, and I said to her, you know, maybe we should just try and buy one vehicle and see how it goes. If it doesn't work, we sell the vehicle. If it works, then we can see what comes from it. And that idea was then formed. We formed a CC, and the name that came up was actually Tough Times Transport, because it was the industry, when somebody passes away, it is really tough times. I always used to brag and say, in the inaugurational speech of Barack Obama, we were the only company in the world that was mentioned, because he said in his speech, it's tough times. Anyway, so we started on the 1st of December 2008 with one vehicle, and it just snowballed. By April, May 2009, we bought the second vehicle. I think it was 12 months later, in 2010, we bought another 2 vehicles. And we really had to then start structuring this company. So I sold the pizza shop, and myself and Mike and Abel Etswalu, the manager that I mentioned, we started officially in a close corporation, Tough Times Transport. We then traded for a year or 2, 3, after which Abel decided that he wants to go on his own, and we bought his shares out, and he then left the close corporation. And shortly after that, probably in the same time, I met a wonderful lady we were at the Alberton Methodist Church. We were on the executive committee of Alberton Methodist Church. And one night after a meeting, I saw her standing outside. I didn't know her well. I knew who she was just from the meeting and being on the executive. And I asked her who she waiting for. And she said, well, she doesn't really have a lift now because her lift had to go somewhere else. And I offered to give her a lift. And in the car on the way to her house, I just started finding out more about her. And I really saw something in her. Her name is Wilhelmina Magale. I saw something that triggered me in a softness, a dearness, a lot of hardship, which I don't want to expand on now. But the next day I phoned her and I said to her, Wilhelmina, I can't offer you much. I can't offer you much more than what you're getting at the moment. But I think there's a future. I think if we work hard together, I think we can make something of this. And on my side, at that time, I was doing the admin, I was doing the quotations, I was doing the financing, I was doing the marketing, I was really doing everything. And I needed her to come in and just learn the quotations side of things, as well as the invoicing side. If she could take care of that, it will free my hands up a little bit more to do a bit more marketing and so on. And she joined, I think, around about 2012. And we were in a small office at my house, at the back of my house, and I created a little office, and we operated from there. And then we started building this business properly. Around about 2017, it took us about 3 years before we landed our first proper big institutional customer. In 2017, we signed a contract with Metropolitan, and Metropolitan basically entered into an agreement that any person that has got a policy with Metropolitan who passes away and needs transport to wherever in South Africa, as well as across the borders to our neighboring countries, we will then be the service provider. That put the company at a different level. Unfortunately, around about, I think it was late 2017, Mike Mbuli, the one partner, passed away, which left a little bit of a void in the company. But Wilhelmina and I decided that between the two of us, we could fulfill his role, as well as we've got a wonderful guy in our company as well by the name of Eddie Tswai, and Eddie showed a lot of potential. So some of the functions of Mike was then transferred onto Eddie, and he excelled brilliantly into that role. But Wilhelmina and I decided that for now, it will be the two of us that will stay directors and that will stay shareholders of the company to make the decision-making a little bit more lean and mean, and that we could work from there. We did used to have a silent partner, and now recently we bought the silent partner out. So basically at the moment it's Wilhelmina and myself that is the directors and the shareholders of Total Funeral Logistics. Just to come back to the name, so around about 2015, when we were pitching for the bigger contracts, I got the feeling when you are in a big board meeting with 13 people from a company like Metropolitan, some people felt it was a very original, but other people felt it wasn't really corporate. And I decided not to take a chance. I wanted a brand that is acceptable for everybody. I appointed a friend of mine to have a look at rebranding, and she gave this wonderful advice. And in 2015, we decided to change the name and in the same time upgrade the company, converted from a closed corporation to a Pty Limited, and we came up with the name of Total Funeral Logistics.
Which make a lot of sense now if you consider that logistics is obviously about transport and transfers. But for our viewers that's not familiar with the word repatriation, tell us what is that all about, and why is there a business opportunity in the market for repatriation of mortal remains?
So John, as you said now, the word repatriation literally means the transportation of mortal remains. In other words, the transportation of a deceased person from one location to another location. Why is it important in South Africa? If you look at geographically, we have urbanized quite a lot in the last couple of years because of the joblessness, and people in rural areas that doesn't have jobs have started moving in the last 5 years. It accelerated tremendously, where they started moving to cities looking for a job. Most of these people have got funeral policies, and funeral policies does have a free service connected and on the policy, where if a person passes away, they qualify for transport back home. If you look at our cultures in South Africa, most people want to be buried where they originate from, and which is 90% of the time it is a rural area. So there was this opportunity, and it was the repatriation exists for the last, let's say, 15 to 17 years. So it's not a brand new thing, but the way it was done, there were loopholes, and there were definitely scope for better service and those type of things. So that's where we come in. But to come back to your question, is that people need to go back home. People need to be buried back where they originate from, which in South Africa, it is in rural areas. So you will see that mostly people that work in Cape Town will probably come from the Eastern Cape, most of them. A small portion will come from the Northern Cape. People working in Johannesburg will mostly come also from the Eastern Cape, but a lot of from Limpopo, and obviously a lot of people from our neighboring countries, the Zimbabweans, Mozambicans, that works in Johannesburg. And those people need to go home when the worst happens and they pass away.
So in the old days, in South Africa, it was kind of a governmental function that ambulances will transfer deceased from obviously hospitals to final mortuaries or where they needed to go. And then all of a sudden, that kind of service on the government side kind of collapsed. Am I correct?
No, I wouldn't say. maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the ambulances were ever involved in transporting deceased to the final resting place. I think pre-repatriation, where what we sitting with today, the families had to see for themselves. So it was bakkies, trailers, whichever means to get that deceased from the city back to the rural areas. I think that was the case. And when it was more officially, put into a system where somebody came up with this idea of making it more organized, and later it became a little bit also regulated. That's when things started making sense for families to take out these policies. So it was an evolvement of where it was and where it is today, and it's obviously much better today. But I think those days, the poor families just had to see for themselves, to be honest. I think undertakers in those days played the biggest role. But unfortunately, an undertaker, it doesn't really make financial sense to take a hearse from Joburg to the Eastern Cape. Hearse is not built for that, number one. And number two, the vehicles get ruined from the long distance and the roads in the rural areas and things like that. So there were definitely that gap in the market that was then filled for the last 15 to 17 years.
Okay. I want to speak about the regulations currently applicable, but first of all, take us through the steps. If someone passes at home or in a hospital, what is the first steps the family need to do or to know about?
In the case of a death at home, the first thing you have to do is to phone an ambulance. You will say, yeah, but the person's already dead. Yes, 100% correct. The person's already dead, but the person needs to be declared deceased by a professional. So the ambulance will come, they will come in, the person is deceased, they will still put their machines on, they will still check, they will still go through all the vitals, and then they will issue a form to declare the person deceased. The ambulance will then leave. They will not touch the body any further. The body will stay there. The second thing will then be that the family will then do is to phone an undertaker. The undertaker can then come and, with the permission from the paramedics, remove the deceased. That is in the case of a natural death. In the case of an unnatural death, maybe by gunshot or any other means, it can be murder, but it can also be something else. It can be an accident. Maybe somebody fell and something cut him, or whatever the case might be. In that case, the paramedics must still come, but also the police. So in an unnatural case, you need to also phone the police. And the police will then decide whether they want this deceased to go for a post-mortem, which will then be transported by the forensic services to a pathology forensic place under the government, or do they see they don't need any further investigation, the deceased can be released to an undertaker. So those are, in short, the two: natural death, ambulance, undertaker. Unnatural death, ambulance, police, and 99% the body will then be transported to a government facility for the post-mortem. And after the post-mortem, then the undertaker gets involved again.
Okay, and in the case of a hospital?
Hospital, almost the same. A hospital will ask the family to name an undertaker. If the family doesn't have the undertaker, most of the times the hospital will then suggest an undertaker in the area, whatever the case might be. Same story with unnatural. If the person was in a car accident or any other unnatural and he came to the hospital, he was still alive, but then after that passes away, that person will then be released again to pathology and forensics, and the body will first go there. They will transport the body to the forensics, and then only the undertaker will get involved. So removal from hospitals in a natural way, like for instance, in our case, if a family phones and says our family member has passed away in this hospital, then we are registered as a funeral undertaker. So we've got a certificate of competence, as well as we've got a designation number at Home Affairs to register the death for the family. We will then take over immediately. Once we receive the phone call, we will meet the family at the hospital. We will assist them. We will remove the deceased. We will register. If there's transport needed, we will transport. If funeral or cremation is needed, we then assist them with all those functions.
So you can take them literally through all the steps there, but tell me a little bit more about the specific services that you offer from the very beginning that you get the phone call till the very end.
So the specific services that we offer, first of all, is removal. Secondly, it's storage, cold storage. Then registration of death, all related documentation needed for whatever route the family wants to take, whether it's cremation or burial. When it's cremation, we obtain the BI 1663, which is a document that it's a government document issued by the doctor that was overseeing this patient until death. Burial orders we get from Home Affairs, like I said, death registration. When it's cremation, there's a series of other documents that we have to obtain to get permission to do a cremation on behalf of the family. And it's a burial, we assist with the booking of the grave and all other functions, like, for instance, flowers and funeral letters and slideshows and catering and all those type of things that people normally need at a funeral. With other cultures, there's other things that we cater for, like, for instance, night vigils, which is basically a prayer during the night where the deceased is at the house. Our president, Mr. Ramaphosa, was talking about the after tears, which is a term that is used by our culture, which is also prayers that's basically after the funeral. The people go back to the house and they get together and they mourn, which is something now that is unfortunately prohibited due to COVID. And then when it flows over to the person passed away in one location, still all these functions need to be done: the removal, the registration, the storage, and then the transport to the last resting place that can be anywhere in South Africa. It can also be in one of our neighboring countries. Then we call it our second division is called the cross-border function. First division is called national repatriation. Second one is cross-border. We will then also do all the permits, all the embalments, everything necessary that needs to be done for the deceased to go across a border into our neighboring countries. And that we do both with our vehicles. And we really specialize in that in South Africa. I think because of documentation and regulation, we must be the market leaders at the moment in cross-border repatriation. And then our third division is when a person passes away in South Africa but comes from any other country in the world further than our neighboring countries. So we call that our international division, which is an export and an import. In other words, another nationality passes away in South Africa, we repatriate by air the deceased back to anywhere in the world. And then also the import side of things is when a South African national passes away in another country and we need to go and fetch the deceased and bring the deceased back to South Africa.
So the national and across borders transfers happen via road. And obviously there's a lot of regulations to keep to. Just fill us in on what are the rules currently, and is it enforced? How does the industry work?
So the regulation of repatriation, there's no specific separate regulation just for repatriation. The repatriation function falls under the Funeral Undertakers Act of South Africa. And in the Act, there is very little mention of transportation, but the Act makes clear mention of preparation of a deceased. And if you go and look at the preparation part of the Act, it stipulates two things. The first one is that you as an undertaker has got 3 hours from the time you removed a deceased from any institution or from anywhere. The moment you lay your hands on that deceased, you have 3 hours to get the deceased to a temperature, body temperature of under 5 degrees. That's number one. Then it further states that in preparation, which means the moment you take the deceased out of your cold rooms and you do anything in preparation, like for instance, coffering or bathing or embalming or transport, because it's now out of the fridge, until that deceased is put into a grave or taken to a crematorium, whatever, in that preparation period, the body temperature of that deceased cannot go over 15 degrees, and it should be over 5 degrees. So that's your scope, between 5 and 15 degrees. Unfortunately, because it's not clearly stipulated in the Act, and it is not policed in South Africa, there are very few service providers like us that sticks to those programs, to those temperatures. You cannot think that you can transport the deceased from Johannesburg to Cape Town in the middle of December in a normal vehicle and keep the temperature under 15 degrees. It just cannot happen. But people do it. And it's unfortunate for us. It's something that we're fighting every single day, because our vehicles that's refrigerated cost obviously a lot more than a vehicle that is not refrigerated and doesn't stick to the regulation. And your pricing model struggles to keep up with the cheaper price that the other service provider can offer, because he doesn't stick to the regulation. But we have decided we will never budge from it. And then we went in a very, very new innovative thing in South Africa. We're the only ones who's got it. So we monitor our temperatures at the back of our vehicle. But we don't only monitor it. If there is any problem and there's any question or a comeback after we've dropped the deceased off, we can prove on a 20-minute reading on that whole trip of 12 to 14, 18 hours to Cape Town, we can prove that every 20 minutes there's a reading being taken and the reading is under 15 degrees. And we're the only company in South Africa that can do that.
Okay, so your vehicles obviously is tracked as well for safety reasons?
Absolutely. Every vehicle has got two devices in. The one is a tracking device, which we have on a fleet system where it is monitored on a live basis of where the vehicle is, where it's traveling, what is the speed it's traveling. And then there's a second device, which is cameras inside of the vehicle. Two cameras, we can see our driver, we check regularly, does he look tired, who has he got in the vehicle, is there any unauthorized passengers in the vehicle, as well as a camera that faces the road, so that we can also see in cases of perhaps an accident, or if we just want to see where the vehicle is when he's loading, is he at the right location? So we've got cameras helping us in that.
Okay, that's a good feature, obviously, to have peace of mind for the families as well. Your vehicles also offer space for co-travel family members. How many can you accommodate?
So the vehicles all have got one row of seating, which is separate from the compartment at the back that is cooled, obviously, where the deceased is. So our vehicles are designed to carry 4 deceased at a time with 1 family member per deceased, in other words, 4 family members. And it's we use our discretion when we've only got 1 or maybe 2, and there is an extra passenger that wants to go with. So we play it by ear, and we accommodate where we can. But if the vehicle is to capacity with 4 deceased, we at least 1 person, 1 family member per deceased can travel with us. So they're seating for 4.
Okay. So obviously there's a synergy between the insurance and funeral industry with funeral policies, etc. And this is where it comes together in your business model as well. Give us a little bit of a breakdown on how this link up.
Yes, John. Most of the funeral policies in South Africa does have the function of repatriation added as a service to the policy. And when something happens, as mentioned before, the claim comes in for the cash value of the policy, but also, if needed, the repatriation part. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of institutions in South Africa that doesn't really put a high value on repatriation as part of their product. So some of them will have a product where there is repatriation, but with a financial cap on it. In other words, if you have a policy and you want to claim your repatriation part of it, you can only claim a certain amount. Now, unfortunately, they make those amounts quite low. When I say low, probably between 5.5 and 7.5 and 10,000 rand. But because of the distances in South Africa, the distance from Cape Town to the Eastern Cape, the distance from Johannesburg to Limpopo, the distance from Johannesburg to Natal and the Eastern Cape, at the prices that vehicles run at the moment, those people can never make it with that cash component. In other words, there's a shortfall. And now, unfortunately, the family has to subsidize, I can almost call it, and top up these these amounts for the repatriation, which I think is really, it's unfortunate from the customer side, because they take out insurance to have a cash value which they can spend on a funeral, and that doesn't really happen, because now they have to spend some of that money on topping up for the repatriation. With all our contracts that we have, is the first call comes to us, because we don't want to, we are the best people to advise the family, not somebody that's not in the industry. And when we take the first call, our first thing that we advise the family is, do not move the body. We will come and move it for you, because it's part and parcel of your insurance, where that tell the family to move the deceased to an undertaker. Now, you can think for yourself, if you move a deceased to an undertaker in Johannesburg, and from that undertaker, the deceased needs to go to the Eastern Cape, the cost for the undertaker in Johannesburg is anything between 3.5 and 5,000 rand. So the body hasn't even started traveling, and you're already 3,500 rand out of pocket, which comes straight out of your cash value. Now, if you've got a policy of, let's say, 10 or 20,000 rand, and you already have to spend 3,500 rand on that, plus you must still maybe top up on the shortfall of the repatriation. At the end of the day, you've got half the money left to have a funeral. And I think it's I wouldn't say just unfair, but it's unfortunate that you're paying a good premium every month, and then you start, when you start claiming, you learn that this wasn't such a good idea. That's why with our customers, when we give them a price, it includes literally everything. And we advise them not to move the body, because we do everything for them as part of the premium that they are paying to the institution.
Okay. So one of the core values of your company is serving with empathy. Obviously, you have a lot of sad but encouraging stories to share with us. Tell us a few without violating your customers' privacy.
I just want to start with the empathy side of things. So when we got involved in this business, the first thing that struck me was the day that our mother passed away. It was a Sunday. You were with me, and an undertaker came and removed the body from the house. And I already felt better just by seeing how, in a dignified way, they took mooks out of the house. I will never forget when the trolley came past us, how their company logo cloth was draped over her body. It was almost like square. It reminded me of a military, square flag that was almost over the deceased. And I already immediately felt better, because I knew our mother was in good hands. So when I got involved in this, I said to myself, that's what I want to do. When I get involved, when Total Funeral Logistics and our team gets involved, we want to put ourselves in the shoes, because that's what the word empathy means. You put yourselves in the shoes of these people who has just lost a loved one. And I always say to my team, the money comes automatically. Don't worry about the money. Worry about how we treat the customer. People say to me, it's a morbid job. To me, it's not a morbid job. I'll tell you why. When I see the face of the family and their, what is the English word, is the appreciation of what you've done and how much pressure you've put. You must remember, when somebody passes away, everybody's in a flat spot. Nobody thinks straight. And unfortunately, in this game, that's where people pounce. That's where people, while they are not thinking straight, the bill starts running up. And unfortunately, they then get overcharged, and I will put it in straight English, gets ripped off because people are in a different frame of mind. So our core values with empathy is make a difference. Make a difference in these people's lives. Don't rip them off. Let everything run smoothly and take the pressure off them, that once you've taken hold of that deceased, they can know my deceased is in good hands. The same way as our mother was in good hands that day when that undertaker came to remove her. I think my most memorable moment in this game was one morning. I think it was a Friday morning at 7:10, my phone rang. And it was funny to me that my phone will ring so early, and the person on the other side he was very short and very firm, and he said to me, good morning, my name is Mike. Do you do repatriation? I said, yes, sir, we do. What can I help you with? He said, can you please transport, didn't ask for quote, can you please transport a deceased for me from Pretoria to Port Elizabeth? I said, yes, sir, indeed, I can. When would you like it to be done? He said, I want you to be in Pretoria at 9 o'clock. This was 7:10. I said, yes, sir, that is possible. We can be there at 9 o'clock. Can you just tell me the name of the deceased and what is the location of the deceased? He says, yes, the name is Riva Steenkamp, and she's at Pretoria Forensic. I went cold, ice cold. I have heard that morning that there was a shooting with Oscar and Riva, and I didn't expect that call to come so quickly, because that whole thing happened at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's now 7:10 and I get a phone call. I got emotional, and it was Mike Steenkamp, her uncle, on the phone. And the next thing that happened is the two of us started crying. And I think he then felt more comfortable because he could hear on the phone that I feel the way he feels. He did, still this day, he never asked me for a quotation. He later said to me, send the invoice. And I sent the invoice and he paid it immediately. But we went then to Pretoria Forensics, and when we got there, the post-mortem wasn't finished yet. And I went personally with one of my guys, the same Eric Try I spoke about earlier, because I was very scared for the media. And this was now a big hype around this whole case. And luckily, Pretoria Forensics was very helpful. They didn't let us load where we normally load. They took us around the back, and we received Riva literally from the post-mortem table into our vehicle. And we quickly went, and I basically circled Home Affairs in Pretoria while Eddie ran in and went to register the death. And once he's done that, we came back to the office, and we were very, very busy that Friday, funny enough. And I decided that I'm going to take her personally, also again to make sure that media doesn't follow us and things like that. And we started traveling to Port Elizabeth. I got one of my other vehicles that's stationed in Bloemfontein to meet me halfway, and I then handed Riva over to him. And the Saturday morning, 6 o'clock, we delivered the remains in Port Elizabeth. So that was a very traumatic experience, but also a very learning experience. And that, again, I want to say that's where the empathy part comes in. And then you get other cases. For instance, there's policies in South Africa that allows people to to qualify for free repatriation to bring bodies from, let's say, Mozambique into South Africa. But those policies are really not worth the paper that they're written on. We get so many phone calls where the people has got cover, but the cover only covers the transport, the physical transport from a neighboring country to South Africa. But everything around what needs to happen before that body can be transported, that is not covered. And then people come to us and we need to sort that out. Now, why I mentioned that is I had a phone call from a company where the employee passed away in Mozambique, in Maputo. The father and mother was 81 and 82 years old. And the insurance told them, you need to go to Maputo and go and sort out all these other documents, send it to us, and then we will come fetch you. Now, how can an 81, 82-year-old couple go to Maputo and go sort these documents out? So the company contracted us. But when we delivered that deceased in South Africa to that couple, those two faces that you see of appreciation and that they could never ever, they were stuck. They didn't know where to go. Luckily, the company helped them and the company paid for it to get us involved to sort this out. And that is where TFL, our motto, our empathy, all these things come, and our knowledge, our intellectual property comes into play. We know how to do it, and we know how to do it quickly. In the middle of COVID, there were no commercial flights that we could make use of. A female passed away in Accra, in Ghana. We did what we had to do to go fetch her. It cost a lot of money, but we chartered private plane. We went to fetch her. We did all the documents. It took us 7 working days, and we had the deceased back in South Africa. That was after the insurance tried for 3 weeks prior to that to get the deceased back, and they couldn't. Eventually, they turned to us and said, can you please help? And it took us 7 working days to do it. So we are proud of, we learned the hard way. We paid a lot of school fees, but we learned what is the correct way when it comes to documentation, what is the correct way when it comes to regulation, and we are efficient to do it in the shortest possible time. And that, I think, is what customers appreciate. But John, to just, the main thing is my reward is not money. My reward is when I see that face of that. I'll never, I can't remember the uncle's name. We went to fetch his son in a very, very remote part of I think it was of Zambia. The place was called Mbujimai. Never forget. And the day I got him here, and his father came here, and he gave me a hug. And this is a big man. He gave me a bear hug, and he cried. That is what makes this business worth it, not the money.
But you also have a beautiful story about delivering a family, a deceased, to a very rural part in Lesotho.
Yeah, that is actually, that again is, we tried to get to the end destination, but this was quite funny because we went across the border and the family said, no, just take a left here, take a right here. And all of a sudden we start climbing these mountains. And we're over the first one and we're over the second mountain. And eventually there was a stream. And we just couldn't go across the stream because our vehicle is not 4x4 and it is quite low. And my driver sent us these videos. So we said to the family, what now? We can't go any further. They said, no, just wait a little bit. We've got all sorted. So here comes an ox wagon pulled by 2 oxen with a beautiful wagon, perfect for a coffin. And we offloaded the deceased from our vehicle onto the ox wagon. And there the ox wagon goes through the river and it carried on to the final destination.
Like we say in South Africa, 'n boer maak 'n plan.
Yeah, no, that is in our job, especially with these imports. When I send somebody like Eddie, for instance, and I send him there, I say, Eddie, the jobs are difficult. Don't phone me with a problem. Phone me with a solution. You must mark a plan.
And obviously, this empathy part must form part of the qualities of your team and the people you employ. Tell us a little bit more about your team and what roles they play.
Yeah, so I just want to say that, you know, I'm a person that is not naturally very positive. I never ever see any negative in anything, and I really try to convert the team and to transfer my positivity into them with the empathy thing. So, as I've mentioned, Wilhelmina is really my partner, and we work really very well. She knows what her responsibilities are. She comes up with very good ideas. She's got my back all the time. She's really a wonderful partner to have, and I love working with her. I love her as a person. We know each other's family matters inside and out. She's got challenges on her side, and I've got challenges on my side, and we discuss it, and we support each other, and we help each other. So it's really a wonderful partnership that we've got going. Then we've got Eddie Chwai. And so Eddie is now, I call him my golden boy, because I've never met somebody like this in my life. So committed, so loyal, so full of empathy, hardworking, and that's why I'm working hard with Eddie to also get him part and parcel on the. He is a manager, but I want to eventually get him part and parcel of the directorship shareholding of the company. He's next in line to come on board. Absolute wonderful person, and Eddie is in control at the moment of all the drivers, all the vehicles, planning of the trips, doing all the logistical planning for the trips every single day. And then he's also a backup driver with his own vehicle, with one of the company vehicles to stand in when we run out of capacity. He's the backup guy. Then we've got a force of, well, I've got one that I sometimes almost forget because she's not here, and I miss her dearly because her function is now been taken over by me. It makes me work a little bit harder, but that is my daughter, Annelien. So Annelien is really helping me with the financial side, and when I'm not here to do the banking, salaries, she does all the labor and employee stuff, and she does the contracts and stuff for us, and she helps literally everywhere. She just backs me up everywhere, whether it's on the quotation side of the marketing part of things, and yeah, so she's literally a jack of all trades, and very good on computers, so she gets called quite often to come and sort something out on my computer quickly. But Annelien is then also the one who made me a grandfather for the first time. And she's currently on maternity leave. I think she's starting to get a bit nervous because she's supposed to come back soon. And we'll see. I said to her, she can come with Marley, and she can work, and I'll look after Marley. We'll see how that's going to pan out. So then, yes, then there's three drivers, two in Joburg and one in Cape Town. Sidwell, Maxwell, and Prosper, and they are wonderful, hardworking people. They bought in from the day they joined the company. They bought into the empathy part of handling the customers, but also because they understand their cultures. They each from a different culture. Prosper is probably a bit Joburg, but his parents is Zimbabwean, but he's South African. And he didn't start, he understands this part of things. Sidwell, his family is more in Lesotho, so he understands that part of stuff. Maxwell is from the Eastern Cape. He understands that. So they understand the cultures, and they understand how we want them to handle the cultures with empathy. And they're also plum markers. They hardly ever phone with a problem. They will phone you and say, I had a problem, but I sorted it out in this way. Specifically when it comes to these cross borders, because rules and stuff, because of bribery and all those things change regularly, and that's one thing that we do not do. We don't pay a bribe, we get the right document. That's what we do. And with specifically now with COVID, there's all new little things at the border post, but you can see it's not just people wanting a little bit of a payback. And then I think there's the girl that makes sure my cup is clean every day and that my coffee machine is full of coffee, and she's the best cleaner in the world, and she helps some of the family members as well. So she's also a all-around very, very neat person by the name of Lutabi. And then our mortuary manager, the last but not the least, my I don't know what I must call him, either my problem child or my welfare case, or my fourth child that I must look after. And he is just a wonderful person. His name is Big Boy. He's actually Solomon Chani, and we've taken him under our wing. He is doing a very, very good job by looking after the mortuary, makes sure it's clean, preparing the deceased for the funerals, coffining them, helping the drivers cleaning their cars, helping the drivers removing from hospitals. He's really a hard worker, and we took him under our wing. And a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, we decided that for one of our social development programs, without his knowledge, we're going to build him a 5-star shack for him and his family. And we secretly got a company that pre-built the panels and everything for you, and they put it on a truck. And one Saturday morning, the whole team just rocked up in his front door, and we said, we're here to build you a house. And he almost fainted, but by 10 o'clock that night, there was a house standing with 3 rooms and a concrete floor, and everything was there. And we handed the keys over to him late that evening as our social project. And yeah, he's still staying in that house. It's in Hammanskraal. And Big Boy is really doing fulfilling quite a big role in the company as well. And I think, yeah, that's the workforce. And then obviously we need a lot of help from time to time, and yeah, that's where you come in, John.
Yeah, so the time was ripe for the company obviously to start shifting gears, and you embarked on a growth strategy. So a lot of things is happening and gonna be rolled out in the market soon. Tell us a little bit about the product you are developing and what has happened to the business.
Yeah, John, obviously with also a lot of your help, and the decision was made that we need to sell something in the company, and without now letting out too many of our secrets before launch date, but let us fill them in a little bit. So we are going to start selling something. And what do we have to sell? We've got repatriation to sell. That's what we do, and that's what we do best. So we've come up with a scheme on how we're going to offer it to the market. Because although people would think that, yeah, people's got policies, they've got repatriation on it and things like that. Like I mentioned before, there's some policies that got problem with the repatriation because it's wrongly structured. So we're going to offer repatriation, it's opportunity, let's call it opportunity,
yeah,
to anybody that needs repatriation, and obviously that wants to be affiliated with the best in South Africa. And we are working hard. We're almost there. We still got a bit of work to do. We need to also, look after our budgets and stuff like that. But I'm very, very, very positive that very soon, the more I think about it, the more we work on this product, the more I listen to what is going on in the market. I think we're going to come to the market at the right time. I can see out there's definitely a need for this, and I hope that when we roll it out that we going to be successful. I'm very, very positive that we are going to be successful with this product that we're going to roll out, and it's going to cover all 3 of our fields: the national, local, the cross-border, as well as the international part of things. And that's what we do, and we do it well. So why not sell it?
So the audience can hear you're a busy person. Unfortunately, you can't take your calls today, but hopefully the team will fill in for you there. But with this growth strategy, obviously comes we are evolving the brand a little bit. It's not going to be a new brand, but there's a little bit of involvement there. And obviously with that comes a website upgrade that will be able to facilitate online sales, and your social media platforms will be ready to be upgraded soon as well, which is a very exciting process to go through. So I want to hear from you as an entrepreneur and a business person who's been in the corporate world as well as being your own boss. What are the business aspects you think business owners struggles with most?
I think the biggest thing is red tape. For a small business owner, when we started back in 2008, it took me 18 months to get everything in place so that we started trading, but everything wasn't in place. So there's lots of things that you couldn't do. Yeah, you could do a trip, but you couldn't register a death. You couldn't remove from a hospital. To get all those things in place, to get the CC form, to get phones in, to get a premises, all those type of things. It is really with red tape, it makes it very hard in South Africa to start a new business. If those things could have been smoother, if government departments could be faster with what they do and how they do it. And with COVID, it's now even worse because now everything is like running on computers from home, and half the time computers are offline. I don't know how they get it right to be offline so much, but that's the main thing. Red tape is one of the biggest struggles of a business owner in South Africa. Then I think the taxation is a huge struggle because at the end of the day, you can't really grow. You can't go forward because you pay a lot of taxes. Every single thing has got a tax to it. I think I counted the other day. I think we're paying something like 8 different taxes as a company. And I think the third thing is definitely the access to funding. You can follow the route of available funding for BE companies, which we are. And there were all these wonderful schemes in Africa, and we pursued almost every single one of them to get funding to grow. And it's impossible. You just can't get funding. There's always something that you don't have. So where all those billions and billions of funding that they are talking about that is available for small businesses to grow, I don't know where they are because we just are not getting them. Maybe it's another fraudulent scheme where only certain people get them and then they get distributed and nothing comes of it. I'm not 100% sure. But what I can say is, also with this COVID thing, it's the small businesses that keeps the country going. Because after 92, a lot of small businesses started. Because of BEE, a lot of people had to leave their jobs and they were forced to form a new company. And all of us went and did that. And we got BEE in place. And we did the thing right the way that everybody wanted it. And it was advantageous to everybody. So there's a lot of small businesses that trades, that keeps the country going with taxes. But we do not get help. We do not get help when it comes to growth. We do not get access to funding. And it's definitely not a white thing. It's got nothing to do with white. We are a black empowerment company. Yes, Wilhelmina and I, we're sitting working shoulder to shoulder, very, very hard. We're equally important in this company. But go for funding, you can't get it because it doesn't exist. To me, it doesn't exist because we have applied and applied and applied over and over and over again, and there's just never any joy.
And on the same hand, you need to create jobs, and you are employing people. So, yes, I think there's a few government officials that needs to listen to this podcast. So,
can I say something about creating jobs? That was one of our main drives, obviously, because we're passionate about it. I want to give more people work. I want to see those people sending their kids to proper schools and to have a proper life and to live in a proper place. I've worked it out. I've presented plans to these funding institutions, government institutions, whatever, where it costs in South Africa, to create one job cost R1 million. To create one job. I've presented plans that I can create jobs for 250,000 Rand per job, which is I can create 4 jobs for every million that they say they create one job. But still, the doors are closed. You just don't get to that. Sorry, you were saying.
No, I wanted to shift gears to the global pandemic. How has this impacted on your business, nationally or internationally? What's the trends you're seeing?
John, so obviously it was busier. When the pandemic hit last year in March, April was very quiet because we had an immediately hard lockdown. Everybody was sitting at home. So there were literally and there was no alcohol. So there were hardly any car accidents. There were hardly any murders. There were no alcohol-related deaths. And it was quiet for April, and it was quiet for May. And here from June, then obviously you could see things picking up. Now, there were 2 things. People think that, oh, because of COVID now, you're probably coining it. It's not really the case, because I'm a little bit too minded about this whole thing. Because, first of all, a lot of regulation obviously was implemented, and which had an impact on us. If you look at PPE, for instance, all of a sudden, every single time we go to a place, we had to have full PPE. PPE costs you money, probably 300, cost price of 300 Rand a pop every single time. If you've got 2 people in your vehicle, it's 600 Rand. And the country wasn't geared. The institutions didn't come and say, listen, I'm paying you so much, but I'll pay you 300 Rand more because of the PPE. That didn't happen. So we had to absorb those costs. Secondly, the time frame that we spent on A removal became enormously long because everybody was not geared for this. It was unexpected. So your time frame of doing a job became a little bit longer. And then deaths. I'm not sure if the people that passed away, obviously, this one passed away from COVID. But what happened to all the flu deaths? They don't tell us how many still died of flu last year. They didn't. I can tell you right now, there were fewer car accidents. That I can tell you, but that you can measure. Yeah. But the thing between pneumonia, flu, TB, AIDS, and COVID, I'm not sure what that number is. I think a lot of people that died of COVID, that was the end result, but the person perhaps had something else before. And COVID was the eventual reason. But if it wasn't for COVID, that person most probably would have died in any case, but just of another. We've got you know about the case where it was a severely cancered person. Severely. Cause of death, COVID. Yeah, so how do you measure it? But when it comes to busy, and you can definitely see the waves, 2 months, the last month and the month before, we were extremely busy when the third wave was at its peak in the Gauteng area. Extremely busy. And now that the wave is sort of like on a downward trend, we see it because it's less than before. How did it influence our business? Not much. Just all the regulations makes it a bit more difficult, specifically with this cross-border, because also cost that is now that we have to incur that is not catered for is every single time you go somewhere across the border, your driver needs to have a COVID test. That's 850 Rand. And people don't want to absorb it. We have to absorb it. So that made it actually pushed our cost a little bit up, and not necessarily so much the volumes. Like I say, the volumes are constant because last year, and the year before, whether the person passed away now of pneumonia or COVID, he still passed away. I'll give you just a quick interesting fact about car accidents. So car accidents and related deaths with pedestrians and things like that. Last year with hard COVID, when the hard lockdown, which basically started I think it was on the 26th of March. And shortly after that, it was Easter weekend. Our average on Easter weekend in South Africa for those 4 days is about 1,850 deaths, motor car related. This year it was 24. I mean, last year, 2020, it was 24.
Yeah, obviously.
You understand? So
Mm.
it's a yeah, it's an interesting number to look at. But yeah, that is what we, on the one end, it influenced us with maybe a little bit more work, but not necessarily, because people still pass away. And on the other side, it pushed our cost up a little bit with all the regulations with PPEs and stuff like that.
Yeah, and in South Africa, we also had restrictions on alcohol use, and I think the domestic violence kind of went down on the one side, and the other side, people were locked in their houses, and obviously that could have also impacted it negatively. So it was a total different ball game. But all along, you were there to service the public and people in need, and that's a good thing that you could have adjusted so quickly. So I want to wind down our interview by asking you a few personal questions. Share with us a few favorite books that you've read, or what are you reading currently?
Yeah, so reading is more or less restricted to holidays, December holidays, where I try to mix it up a little bit with between storybooks and some of it's a little bit of business books. So yeah, the one that I'm busy reading at the moment, it's a book called Fake. So this book is written by Robert Kiyosaki. He's also the Rich Dad Poor Dad author. And basically the book goes about fake money and fake people.
Wow.
And if there's something that I really hate in my life is fake. I really do not enjoy it. I think I'm just the type of person that, when it comes to lying, I am totally, if you don't really want to get on my wrong side, then you must lie to me. Honesty is something that is really, really high in my life, and I do try to transfer it to my kids' life as well. And then back to the books, I like reading the Dion Meyer books. It's a very, very gripping stories that, and then I obviously, like to also read a little bit about aviation, because that's something that is very interesting to me. I am attempting to get my PPL at the moment, and so I spend a lot of time in watching videos and things about landings and emergency situations and things like that. So that's basically also something that I read quite a bit on.
Okay, and do you have icons in the business world?
Yes. Look, when it comes to the business world, there's obviously the big guys around the world and the Elon Musks and all those type of guys. But I concentrate more on the South African guys, because I feel a South African person, a big South African person, always had to, like you said, make a plan and to be creative and make a lot of money. So I would say somebody like Johan Rupert, I've got a lot of respect for, of what he's achieved. Somebody like Larry Dippenaar, one of the Rand Merchant Bank guys, and all three of them, the GT Ferreira and Paul Harris, all of them. And I would say in South Africa, those are my business icons. Yeah,
they are true South African business models, business people that comes over generations. So really people to look up to.
What I just want to say, what I respect about them is they've all got the money to leave this country, all of them, but none of them have. So because they love this country and they make a difference in this country, and that's what I respect them for. True.
So in my final questions for the people I interview, I give you one word. This is the section that I call rapid answers. I give you one word, and you give me one word back that comes through your mind. Okay.
Is there any correct and wrong answers?
No. This is your answers. So the first one I want to throw at you is altruism or helping people.
Care.
Okay. Aviation.
Sling 2.
And that's your favorite aircraft?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one involves 3 concepts: sport versus hunting versus fishing.
Equal.
Can't choose. Okay, and spirituality.
God.
All right. And then the last one is grandchild.
Marley.
Marley is the one and only. So what a privilege.
If you ask me in another year or so time, it's gonna have to be twofold also.
For sure, there will be movement on that side as well. Chita, I would like to thank you for coming onto the Strategy Maker podcast and for the journey Strategy Maker have with your brand and your business. And I would like to wish you well with the launching of your new products and services that we're going to get to the market soon. And obviously for our viewers, you will have all the links below the video where you can follow the business. And we would like to have you back soon and hear about the growth in your business.
Thank you so much, John. I just want to say that I really, really do not hope people pass away. But if it has to happen, we would like to be the ones to help them with a lot of empathy.
Thank you so much. See you soon.